Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the In the Clutch podcast. I'm Jonathan Michael. Today, I'm joined by Wesley Stambaugh and Michael Savoy. Unfortunately, our usual host, Teddy Ball, was unable to make it today due to some technical difficulties. His computer just wasn't working for him. So we're rolling three strong, but ready to talk about lots of football. Fellas, how have you guys been?
I've been good. High school season on our way. I can't believe it's halfway through the season. It felt like, just yesterday when I was writing roundups for some of these schools, and now we're about 4 weeks into the season. So it's flying by quick, and it's been great football. So yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot of great games in our WMBD games of the week. Had another classic this past week, and it's good to have some good high school football to distract us from the Bears.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we've been on a pretty good streak in terms of picking the right games for at least the games that we do our video broadcast for our WMBD games of the week on CIProud.com. We saw another absolute classic and Metamora. Metamora won that game 40-37. And I mean, let's just dive right into it, guys. I mean, a big week four of action. No one's clinching playoff spots quite yet. They can this coming week, but teams can get themselves in good position and everything, obviously, especially in the playoffs as well as their conference standing as well. And also just overall, just building momentum. Maybe a team, realizes that, hey, maybe we're not going to make the playoffs this year. At least we likely won't. But hey, we can get a good win and get things going in the right direction. It's also big. But I mean, we'll start just, I guess, with our game Metamora and Morton. I know obviously neither one of you guys were there. I mean, I can talk about that. But actually, let's talk about the games you guys were at. Wesley, I know you were at Bloomington and Normal West. That was a statement win for Bloomington, 48-16.
Yeah, they were really dominant, and I think most of us expected that to be a pretty tightly contested game, and it wasn't. I mean, Bloomington just blew them out of the water. I mean, I couldn't put my finger on much of a particular, way that they beat them. I think they kind of beat them in every way. I mean, they're really dominant with the run game, and they were able to get it to a lot of different guys that had Rob Lanier, but also Cedric Gassaway and Lorenz Higgins got a lot of productive runs too, and the fullback Mikey Kimmel. So I mean, they were really able to ground and pound, and they also had lockdown defense. I mean, only give up 16 points, so and they didn't throw a whole lot, but they were pretty efficient in what passing they did have. So I think it really was a statement, just showing how much they could do and going at Urbana this weekend, and then their schedule really gets tough. So it'd be interesting to see how they fare against those really good teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bloomington, 4-0 for the first time since I saw it today, 2004, which is pretty crazy. So, I mean, this could be a really special season for the Purple Raiders. And, I think that, most years you have, there's two things for certain in the Big 12 is that Peoria High and Normal Community are probably going to contend for a conference title. Usually there's a third, though, maybe a fourth team, though, that finds themselves in the mix. And, I think Bloomington is definitely one of those teams. Obviously, and again, you got P&D, Normal West, Champaign Centennial, also still in the mix. Could either win or share the conference title if a couple of things go their way. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, I was looking at the stats from that game, and obviously passing was very efficient. A lot of guys involved in the run game, and overall, just a tough, hard-nosed football team. I think that's what we've kind of come to expect from this Bloomington squad. And obviously, I want to talk about Normal West as well, who, by the way, is going to be in our WNBD game of the week this week against Peoria High. It looks like Normal West, though, had a potentially their looked like their backup quarterback was playing, obviously for them. So I'm sure getting used to kind of a Newman under center. What were some good things that you saw out of Normal West despite that loss for them?
I think they were able to get some explosive plays. Like they never really had a lot of consistent sustained drives, but they did have some big pickups here and there. So I think that's something to build on that they are gonna always have a threat of making a big play.
Definitely, yeah. Looking forward to seeing them, and and then Michael, you were at another Big 12 game, arguably one of the biggest games in the entire state, up near Kankakee. You saw the Ironmen take on the Kankakee K's, and looks like Ironman had a strong comeback attempt in the second half, but ultimately just fell just short.
Yeah, it was really just a tale of two halves. I mean, Kankakee in the beginning of the game really got off to a really strong start. They actually had a 26 nothing lead. at halftime, it was why I say a tale of two halves is because Kankakee scored all 26 of their points in one half, and then, like you said, John, Normal's comeback not able to be completed. They only scored their only 13 points in the second half. I think really the biggest takeaway from this game is that Normal community just isn't there yet. Not in terms of competing in their own conference. We know how good they are in the Big 12. I mean, they're if they're not undefeated in their conference, they usually have one or two lost team in their conference. What I'm really looking at with Normal Community is that they're not there yet in terms of the state. You saw about a team that last year got to the state semifinals, but they just couldn't get over the hump of going to the state championship game. I think this game against Kankakee gives them a learning moment to show that they just aren't there yet. And Kankakee has something that normal community doesn't see often, and that's speed. The only team in the Big 12 that has speed that's similar to Kankakee is Peoria High. So really, the Ironmen don't see much of that element besides Peoria High, maybe like Manual, but yeah.
And also Normal West too. I would argue, Normal West is a pretty fast team. Bloomington, maybe a kind of a more tougher ground and pound team, but obviously some speedy guys there. So I mean, there is definitely speed in the Big 12, that's for sure. But yeah, again, like you said, Kankakee and Peoria High, are those teams that kind of take it to a new level. Really looking forward to that Normal Community Peoria High game in Week 9. There's a ton of great games that week, and that one might be the best of them. Could be for a Big 12
I want to say this
right?
about community though while we're at it. I
Sure.
think this game, like I said, is a big teaching moment for them. I just think that this game allows them to realize that, hey, we aren't going to be the heroes that's going to like go all the way to the state championship game. We got to get better from this game and hopefully learn from this game to actually reach where we want to go. And like I said about our community, their first three games of the season, they were flat out dominant. I mean, you're outscoring opponents by like 40 points a game almost. Then you go to Kankakee, and for a moment, you just felt like it was going to be a blowout Kankakee's way. You were kind of struck. I was struck by it. Not saying that Kankakee isn't good. Kankakee is a really good team. They're probably probably the best team in the area where I live. So really good team. I think normal community takes a lot away from this game and gets better for the future games.
I think if you're a normal community, it's good to have a game like that on the schedule because I mean they know that they're going to make the playoffs, and it's good to have those tests in the regular season to see where you're at and where you need to get better. Because you play 9 cupcakes and then go into the playoffs, it's hard to beat those good teams when you get deeper into the playoffs.
Yeah, certainly, and obviously again, community will be a good test in the Big 12. I mean, obviously they'll have, Peoria High coming. They have I think Bloomington coming Week 6. They faced Normal West when the Wildcats were a bit more at full strength in Week 2 and dominated in that game 48-7. So again, really I don't think that there's a ton that Normal Community had to lose in that game. Obviously doesn't hurt their record in the Big 12. They can still go undefeated in conference play, can still win the conference for sure. And, I still think that they'll probably, again, we're recording this on Tuesday night. The AP poll will release on Thursday mid-afternoon, early evening. But, I still expect them to probably still be ranked in the 7-8 top 10. That's overall a pretty good loss. And, again, like you said, a lot of good things to take away from that game. But let's go back over to Mid-Illini. Obviously, I know neither one of you guys were at the Metamora Morton game, but I was on the call for that one, and that one was a ton of fun. I mean, really a game that both teams, didn't like absolutely need to win, but both really wanted to win. Because there's just so much uncertainty in the Mid Illini right now. You never know, who you're going to be able to pick up a win against. Those guaranteed wins, maybe from past years, aren't guaranteed wins this year. So and Mort arguably needed that win a bit more. They're coming in 1-2. Metamora was at 2-1, and Potters, despite the loss, showed some really good things. Sophomore quarterback Isaac Davis was really, really impressive, and especially on the option, and just some design QB keepers as well. I mean, he is such a big chunk of that offense, and I think the big thing for Morton is going forward is you have a great playmaker in Davis. It's just finding the other guys, like Julian and Alexander, like Sean and Buffington, and kind of helping them kind of also carry their part of the load on offense. That way Davis doesn't have to do everything, but he did a lot, and nearly got them to a win. Vian Seams, also their running back, played a great game as well. He's been getting some more carries. lately with Buffington being a bit banged up. But yeah, and then on Metamora's side as well, big plays were the theme of that game. In case you didn't tune in and watch it, but you had a 73-yard touchdown pass to Eden Cote, who, by the way, had over 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in just the first half. And I mean, he didn't have anything in the second half, but still, that was the Eden Cote legacy game, you could say. He had some big catches. He's Metamora is probably their number 2 wideout most likely, and well, he really had a big game, and on the ground as well. Stephen Petrie, Evan Kyle, both did some great things. Jadon Cranford was also back healthy again. So big key for the Redbirds really is excuse me, is just staying healthy. They had a ton of guys that got banged up either with cramps or pulled muscles or some other thing. So there was about 6 or 7, maybe even 8 different guys that went down at different points during the game for the Redbirds. So health is a big thing for monitor. If on the Redbirds, I'm maybe taking it a bit easier in practice this week, making sure that the guys are fully healthy, getting ready to go because I think Metamora is a team that could contend for a Mid-Atlantic title this year, despite that loss to Washington. So, but looking at other spots from the Mid-Atlantic, I mean, again, I still think it's very wide open given this past week's results.
That should definitely be an interesting race in the middle line. Then the mid line with East Peoria, Washington, Dunlap, Metamora. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can make some noise and could come down to a race with a lot of teams late in the season.
Yeah, you look at the Middle Atlantic Conference, and in my opinion, just like what John said, it's very wide open. You talk about almost all the teams vying for at least maybe even a conference title. I mean, at this point, you never really know with these 5 weeks left in the season. But like you guys have said in previous podcasts, East Peoria has gotten off to a really strong start. But I don't want to say the cupcakes in the schedule are over, but I think the easier teams in their schedule are behind them. I think out of the 5 games they have left in the season, they have the 5 best teams in the middle line. So it's going to be very hard for them to vie for position in the postseason. But I think out of those 5 games, they can definitely win one and get a spot at a 5-win team in the postseason.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, not to tell anyone that I told you so, but I remember vividly first episode of the season, I said that hey, there's a real shot that East Peoria starts season 4-0. Oh no, 4 weeks later, I guess here we are. So I don't always get those types of predictions right, but glad to say that I was able to. Now I didn't speak it into existence. Obviously, that's all the guys in the field that did the work. But wild win over Canton. I mean, how about that game? Our Dalton Carmine, who's not with us right now, but he was on the call with that game. Our small town throwdown. He saw an absolute classic. I mean, Dalton Oakman leading his team on a 75-yard scoring drive, I believe, with no timeouts to take the lead. Then Canton runs that 70-yard hook and ladder play and he gets knocked out of bounds at the 1-yard line. So, I mean, that just sounded like an absolutely bonkers game. Again, got to obviously feel for Canton. I think that was probably the best game that they've played so far this season. And Canton's played some really tough teams this year. Obviously right now you're looking, 0-4. Playoff hopes are kind of, fading pretty fast if you're them. But, they faced some great teams this year. They faced Coal City and Eureka. Both teams could be state ranked in the non-conference. And then, good showings so far, especially last week against EP. But, yeah, and then obviously, Washington, beat Pekin 19-9. That was an important one for Washington. Pekin was riding that high after beat Dunlap. And, Washington kind of still said that, hey, you're not going to run away with it like you did 2 years ago. So it's just so wide open right now. Again, even Morton, so if they could get hot, could get a playoff spot or maybe get close to winning a Mid-Atlantic title. So looking forward to some big games. Look at the schedule this week in Mid-Atlantic. Not a ton of games stand out a ton. Maybe a little bit of a lighter week. Yeah, Metamora at Limestone. I expect the Redbirds to win. Dunlap or no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the volleyball games from today. I was looking at the wrong things on our master schedule with all the sports. So Canton plays at Metamora this week. Again, I think Redbirds should still roll. Limestone's at Washington. I think the Panthers should probably roll. The game that I have my eye on is Pekin and Morton. And also East Peoria Dunlap as well. If the Raiders maybe they prove they're for real and take down the Eagles. You never know, but I think those two games are going to be the biggest ones.
Yeah, I have my eyes on that Canada Dunlap game, or excuse me, Dunlap and East Peoria game. I want to see if East Peoria is legit. I mean they're 4-0, and you can look at a 4-0 team and say, okay, they're legit. They've won four in a row, but they haven't really faced that one team that's like that signature win. I think Dunlap would be that team that signature win. This would be the game that would put East Peoria in the playoffs if they were to win this game. So very important for the Raiders. And Dunlap obviously being in the midst of the Middle Illini too, so that's a big game for both teams.
Yeah, definitely. And and then also just kind of put a bow on week 4. Some other sort of I guess notable results. We'll try and go through some of them here. P&D a huge win over Richwoods. Peoria High puts up 86 against Manual. That was quite the statement. And Eureka, they beat El Paso Gridley in a defensive showdown, 14 zips. The Hornets are 4-0 and can clinch playoff eligibility. Fieldcrest got their first win of the season, a big win for them over Westmont. I think that one was 54 to zip. And Bloomington Central Catholic now on a 2-game skid, lost another close game to a very good Monticello team. So I think it's definitely a team to monitor. I think it's still a team that's going to be very good. But is obviously had 2 close losses, and you got Tolono Unity, St. Joseph Ogden coming up next in that very tough Illini Prairie Conference. So I'm excited to see what the Saints have coming their way, and normal U High. We talked a bit about them before we hopped on the show, but they won 52 to nothing over Lincoln, and Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, both big wins, and then Princeville had a nice win over Rovo Williamsfield 26-14, and they're also 4-0 too. So anything stand out? Anything you guys want to touch on from either of those teams or any of those games from this past week that stood out to you?
I think Central Catholic, I think they're gonna right the ship. They lost a lot of talent, but they also have a lot of young talent coming up. So I think it's about getting things figured out. And their head coach Kevin Brott talked about riding their defense while they kind of get the offense moving. They're replacing their quarterback. They had a 3-man race for that. So I think there's some shifting going on, but I think they'll definitely have it going by the end of the season.
Yeah, Farmington and Elmwood Birdfield are two teams that stick out to me in terms of how small schools go. Two of the very best teams in their classes, respectively. They actually play this Friday, so that's going to be a really good game to monitor. And I know Cody Roskins is going to be there doing the small town throwdown for his beloved Farmers. So Farmington's a really good team, one of the very best in 2A. They're right behind, or excuse me, they're ahead of Moments, which is one of the teams by where I live who's really good too. They're number 3 in 2A. Farmington's number 2. So a lot of really good teams in terms of small school as well. So that game, Elmwood, Birdfield, and Farmington should be a game they'll look out for this Friday.
Yeah, it's gonna be a huge one, and like Michael just said, that'll be our small town throwdown game. You can listen to that one live in for free on our website. Cody Rossum was on the call with a guest color commentator to be determined. But looking at Farmington and Elmwood Brimfield's schedule so far, they've played nearly the same exact teams, and had nearly almost the not the exact same, but pretty similar results. Elmwood Brimfield beat Illini West by 30. Farmington beats them by 33. Illini Farmington beats West Hancock by 32. Elmwood Brimfield, excuse me, beats them by 35. Elmwood Brimfield beats Decatur St. Teresa by 31. Farmington beats them by 24. So, I mean, this is two teams that have just been absolutely plowing through their competition the first 4 weeks. And, something's got to give in week 5. And it is going to be a dandy of a ball game out there at Elmwood. Trojans. So, looking for their first win in the rivalry for quite some time. But they're coming in right in a pretty hot streak. They were 1-5 after 6 weeks last year, then won their last 3 games of the season and finished 4-5, didn't make the playoffs. But then they've obviously won their first 4 this season. So that's 7 straight games that Elmwood Brimfield has won. So, Farmington, obviously their reputation precedes them. They deserve their high ranking, and it's I think it's definitely a testament to the talent they have with their big wins as well. But I think it's going to be a very, very good game. out there in Elmwood this next weekend. I think a lot of people are going to be kind of tuned in or kind of following that game as well. But um, also just kind of talking about week four at all. I don't know if you guys had any chance to maybe look at any standout performances or read our roundups at all. Is there any maybe any player performances that had big games, or maybe just teams that stood out to you guys last week?
I'll look at my game and normal community. I think something that stood out to me was the fact that a team that in their first 3 weeks, like I said, didn't go through much adversity. You're talking about blowing out teams, and then they go into Kankakee, like I said, and they fall behind really early. They fall behind by quite a bit. They fall behind by 3 scores, and then the halftime hits. They're down by 26, and then they go in the second half, and now their defense is starting to stop Kankakee, and their offense is starting to roll. So I think the adjustment from the adversity they went through to the second half was big for the Ironman. It really showed that even though they're down, they haven't really been down that much. They can still fight and get through it. The big the big thing I saw from the Ironman there was Kyle Beatty, the Kalen Taylor in the second half. The 2 touchdowns they scored were receiving. Taylor had 2 receiving touchdowns from Beatty, so that was something that I kind of kept my eye on and something that stood out to me.
I had Rob Lanier from Bloomington. I mean, they would run all over Normal West, and he was really consistent with 7, 8, and 9 yard carries, and they're really able to stay ahead of the chains. And on that note, I also want to shout out Bloomington's offensive line. I think they were just bigger and seemed just stronger than Normal West, and really able to move guys and open up a lot of big holes for all 4 guys that got a significant amount of carries.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, it's easy to talk about. Those skill position guys that get all the love. They're the ones that get to the end zone. But I mean, we've seen it multiple times this season. Every game that so much is decided at the line of scrimmage, and having an offensive line is arguably again talked about last week. Compared it to the Bears, the most important part of your team. So. I mean, really, I think if you kind of line up, like, which teams in the area have the best offensive lines, those are probably going to be the teams with the best records, and maybe the teams that go deepest in the playoffs as well. But as far as maybe some players that stood out to me last week, first off, Elmwood Brimfield, Bo Windish, 293 carries or 293 yards, not 293 carries. I think his legs would fall off if he had 293 carries. If he had 293 yards on 14 carries, that's over 20 yards per rush, along with 5 touchdowns as well. So, I mean, that's the kind of numbers that EB has been putting up on the ground this past week. Alec Wheeland from Normal U High had a great game, had over 300 total yards, 5 total touchdowns as well. Got it done passing, got it done throwing. So he has really just been phenomenal this year. Stephen Petrie in our game, again, kind of a trend of quarterbacks or whatever. Petrie had a great game at Metamora. Again, had over 350 total yards, 4 touchdowns, and also on Dunlap as well. I know there's they have a lot of talented guys on that team. Obviously Max Sutter's the main one, but there's a lot of other guys that help play big parts in those wins for Dunlap each week. And I didn't get full stats from Dunlap, but I did hear through the grapevine, through some other things. Joe Weeks, their linebacker, all conference player last year, had a great game for them. Had an interception, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and at least 1 touchdown. Maybe could have been more. Not quite sure, but he's just one of multiple players on Dunlap. That helped them to a big 49-zip win over Limestone this past week. But kind of looking ahead to week 4, guys, and another kind of segment I kind of had, that me and Teddy had planned out. It's a team that maybe you lost last week that you think could bounce back this week.
I'll keep my roots in the Big 12 here. I'll go with Richwoods. They fell handedly to PND, their rival, but they're 1-3 now. They're going to be facing Champaign Central, another 1-3 team. 2 teams that are very similar in terms of their points for and points against, and the records obviously being the same. I expect that to be one of the bigger and better games in the Big 12, and I think Rich Woods pulls that out. And I think last week I looked at Rich Woods and was like, if they beat PND, there's a chance that they're a 5-win team and make the postseason. And obviously, they don't beat the Irish, and There's definitely three winnable games left on their schedule with Central, Urbana, and Danville. Also, they have Peoria and Muhammad Seymour, but it's going to be tough sledding for Richwoods if they want to make the playoffs. But I think week 5 against Champaign Central, I think they get the win.
It's a good pick. I like it.
I like Metamora to come home and beat Pekin. I think playing the really.
Metamora won, but I mean,
Sorry, Morton. Sorry, Morton. Morton's playing Pekin.
Yeah.
Flipped it. I think Morton come home and beat Pekin. Tough game on the road last week, but they played really competitively, and we saw the explosive plays on both sides of the ball. And I think they'll be able to get some more explosive plays to push them past the conference rivals at home.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That Morton Peak game is going to be really, really big. Again, yeah, peaking at 2-2. Obviously, started a lot of promise with that win over Dunlap, but again, don't want to get too ahead of themselves. They are still just 2-2. They need, obviously at least 3 more wins, most likely to make the playoffs. Obviously they have Canton, Limestone, East Peoria coming up. East Peoria, obviously is kind of no longer that guaranteed win. Whatever on Canton and Limestone, I think could put up fights as well. If they put together a good game. So, it's a really important game for Pekin. If you get that win, you're up to 3. And if you're Morton, if you win that game, okay, you get your second. Now you get 3 more. Limestone and East Peoria still in their schedule, along with Dunlap and Washington. So still very much possible for Morton, but Morton needs to kind of maybe treat this game like a playoff game, because if you lose, not saying that you're going to be out of the playoffs, you still could win 4 in a row. But again, you got games against Dunlap and Washington, and unless you win both of those, then you're most likely on the outside looking in. So it's going to be a really big game for the Padres, just like it was last week. And well, you guys are making it tough for me. Those were the 2 ones that I had thought of first, but team that I think will bounce back. I'm going to go with a team. We haven't talked about it yet this podcast. I'm going to go with IVC. Now, I know the Gray Ghosts are 0-4. They come off a loss to St. Joseph Ogden, but they only lost that game 42-28, and SJO is one of the top teams in Class 3A this year. So that clearly something had to have been working for Tim Hines and the Gray Ghosts. And IVC is at Prairie Central this week. Obviously, Prairie Central is a pretty good squad and everything. But I think if IVC, clearly if they can kind of keep on building off of what they showed last week, get the offense rolling a little bit. Obviously start to win games. You give up 42. If you can put together a good defensive game, I think the Gray Ghosts have enough options on offense and enough weapons that they could make it a game and potentially come away with a win at Prairie Central as well. So. That's my pick for a team to bounce back this coming week. But kind of looking ahead to our games this week, we'll start with the ones that we're broadcasting. I know we talked a lot about Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, but Peoria High, Normal West. We haven't seen Peoria High, at least with the broadcast side, yet this year. Really looking forward to seeing them, though. Just so many weapons, and that offense is really, really humming right now.
Yeah, they have. They look like they haven't missed. They look like they haven't missed a beat. Because you think maybe new head coach, maybe something changes, but something like it really just hasn't changed with them. Still the very explosive offense that they are. They hung, what was it, 82 points against Manual?
86.
You said, John? 86. Yeah. So still a very explosive offense. I'm sure they play the same Peoria style that we're all used to. So that should be a really fun game. I'll be definitely tuning in. So.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Normal West can respond as far as stopping the running game, because they failed to stop against Bloomington. We know Peoria High is going to be a physical team, a quick team. So interesting to see what adjustments they make to not let more of the same happen from what happened to them last week against Bloomington.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the ground game is really going to be a big part of it. And I would argue that is probably the biggest key for Normal West, because Peoria High, you have Breon Green, their quarterback, who has just been absolutely phenomenal, been one of the area's top performers each of the first 4 weeks of the season. Gets it done with his arm, gets it done with his legs as well. I think he's probably thrown in a rush for a touchdown. I think at least one of them each of the first 4 weeks. And then you also have Datarion Pollard, who is just the latest in the line of a great line of Peoria High running backs. I also have Kendall Netters, a transfer from Dunlap as well, who's super speedy and kind of fits the type of offense that they like to run as well. And and then when Green throws the ball, he's got lots of options. Tiki Webb, Jalen Rayford's had a good year, Spencer Russell as well, and so again, yeah, Pure High's offense has just been lights out, and I'm curious to see if this 2024 team can rival their squad from a couple of years ago that set an all-time IHSA season record for points scored in the season. Excuse me. That obviously they have to probably go pretty deep in the postseason to match that record because they won a state title the season that they did send that record. But yeah, it should be a really good game. We've this is I think our third straight year broadcasting Peoria High Normal West. 2 years ago, Normal West won that game in a sloppy mud fest because Peoria High just couldn't hang on to the football, and Normal West made him pay with some turnovers. That football was just like a bar of soap that night. And last year, Peoria High hung on to win a close game over West at Peoria Stadium. So it's always a fun time when those two teams meet, and definitely looking forward to that. And again, I know we talked a lot about Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield. Any other games maybe this coming week that stand out to you guys that are ones to watch, whether it's maybe obvious ones or ones that are maybe under the radar too as well?
I'll go under the radar, and I know we don't cover this team like really at all, besides maybe a preview. And I'm not saying that as a way to, say anything, but I think Peoria Heights 8-man football can get their first win of the season. They're playing 0-4 Galva. They're also 0-4 Peoria Heights is, so that should be a game that the Patriots can definitely win. And I always have a respect for the Patriots because they remind me of my high school. So, I always have respect for them, and I think they can win this game. So, look for the Patriots to get their first win
Hey,
this
shout out,
week.
shout out 8-man football, man. I love it. I love it. That's a good pick too. I think Peoria Heights, I think, is due for a win. Wesley, what about you?
I think El Paso Gridley at Tri Valley would be a good game. I'd still expect Tri Valley to take that one, but I think El Paso Gridley's looked pretty good to start the year, and that'll be probably their biggest challenge yet going at Tri Valley, who's historically been really good. Went to the state championship a couple years ago, so that'll be a good challenge to see if they're legit.
Definitely, and I'm going with it's tough for me. I'm kind of flip flopping between two of them right now. Both Twin Cities teams, but neither one of them Big 12 teams. Bloomington Central Catholic at Tolono Unity. The Unity Rockets are coming off a 53-52 loss against Class 1A number 2 Belleville Althoff Catholic, who has multiple D1 commits on a school of maybe about 100 to 200 kids. I mean, it's crazy. This Althoff team down in Class 1A, and they might be state title favorites this year, and I would love to watch them in person. But Rockets are off to a close one to a very, very good Althoff squad. So I'm curious to see how they're going to fare against BCC. I'm curious to see how the Saints are going to fare. Now losing two very close games in a row. Can they get one back and get a good win against Tolono Unity, who could potentially be ranked this coming into that game. But then also Normal U High is at Rochester. And now, before the season, again, Normal U High had super high expectations. I think that, even still, they would have been a strong contender for a conference title in the CSA East, along with Rochester and Glenwood. But Rochester, they're 2-2. They lost to a pretty good team week 1 from St. Louis. But they're dealing with their starting quarterback, Brian Zuloff, is out with an injury. So Rochester is kind of going next man up at quarterback. Again, still a very, very talented team. Still a team that could come away with a win. But I think U-High, I think maybe the job gets a little bit easier potentially to face one of those teams that they haven't been able to beat. Rochester's been a state powerhouse the last couple of years, and I think maybe this is the year, especially how well the Pioneers have played the last few weeks, that maybe they can catch lightning in a bottle and beat Rochester, which would probably set them up for a winner take all conference title game in week 6, most likely against Chatham Glenwood. So I got my eye on the Pioneers. Should be a really fun game down in Rochester this week. But guys, I know we're kind of wrapping things up here. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Comments, things on your mind about high school football at all? Well, we have a few more minutes.
No, I mean, actually, I have one. I think out of all the years, I mean, I've just been here for this is my second year really just covering Central Illinois sports, but I think, even just looking a few years past when I started covering, I think all the conferences, especially the bigger conferences, this has probably been the most competitive year I think I've really seen Central Illinois conferences like the Middle Illini, Big 12, even the Heart of Illinois, be this competitive. So I think this is one of the best years in terms of competitiveness in the conferences, bigger conferences.
Yeah, and and one thing I wanted to point out, something that I read earlier this week actually. I went back, I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with Steve Such from Friday Night Drive. Who puts all the huge, I should say, football bracketologists. A lot of people watching maybe have seen his tweets, especially near the postseason and everything. I was reading his week one bracket preview, like his guess of what the brackets would look like for the postseason, and he said, after doing some research or whatever with the way that some new things are shaken up with some stuff in the Chicago Public League, as well as with a couple things, obviously some teams not fielding full 11-man teams this year, that there is going to be probably the largest amount of 4 and 5 teams to make the playoffs this season than there ever has been before. And we're talking maybe in the amount of 15 to 20, possibly, just with the way that things are working out. So if your team is 0-5 after this week, if you're not, there is still hope after this week. And, I think we could see, probably at least one, maybe even two 4-5 teams in our area make the playoffs this year. Just it's too detailed. You can, for me to explain now, but you can go look at it. Steve does some great work or whatever. And we'll also have our bracketologies coming out when the season gets closer to the end with some projections or whatever. But overall, should be a fun week, guys.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to watch your guys' broadcast this Friday and future broadcasts to come. And like I said before in the open, I think this football season has been great, and I just can't wait for it to finish.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Wesley, any final thoughts?
just a couple really solid teams in that WNBD game of the week, and I'm really looking forward to that.
It should be a good one. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the In the Clutch podcast. I'm Jonathan Michael. When I shout out my fantastic co-hosts, Michael Savoy and Wesley Stamba. We'll be back next week for another episode, and we'll be with you on Friday night for Peoria High and Normal West, as well as Farmington and Elmwood Brimfield. Till then, so long, folks. We'll talk to you soon.